Hello, everybody, and welcome to Common Sense with Curtis Scott. And I'm here today with James Buford for U.S. Congress, Texas District 6. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor to be here and to be with you and your listeners.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for coming on. If you could, go ahead and just give us a little introduction and a little bit of your background, please.
Very good. Yes, my name's James Buford. I am running for U.S. Congress District 6. This is my second term of running. Um, People ask me all the time, why are you running? And I've come to this conclusion is I've been affected by the federal government in a negative way too many times, and it has really pushed me to be a voice for my neighbors, for my family, for myself. And so, just a little bit about my background. I've pastored small churches for around 30 years. I uh, turned out the lights and locked the doors on my church in 2020 for the last time, much like 30% of our churches in the country did also. Uh, our government is not representing us. They are really just taking advantage of us with open borders. They're spending. The out of control, the ballot, not being able to trust it. So these are some of the items that caused me to get into this race. And so, with that being said, I've built homes. I'm currently a regional maintenance supervisor for a major company that buys and sells and rehabs and so forth apartment complexes across Texas, Tennessee, Arizona, and most recently Nevada. And so I do thank you for taking the time out of your busy day from your family to listen in, and hopefully that you'll get a little bit of insight about where I'm at, where my heart is, and what I'd like to see accomplished in the next couple of years in DC for you and for myself and my family.
Okay, well, that sounds good. I'm glad to hear you got a good background, it sounds like. How many years of ministry totally, or total time?
Over 30. So
Over
I
30 years?
pastored my first church. I was about 22. Had 8 people in a 25 by 25 foot room. I thought I was in hog heaven.
Okay. I've done quite a few, been to quite a few churches doing youth ministry. Been here in Midlothian, the Lighthouse Church, the Shepherd's House Church. Been at Cowboy Church, done youth pastoring there. So I kind of
Wow.
understand, and that can be a crazy world sometimes dealing with churching and everything, especially with the climate of the world now with everything. So you
Yes,
kind of
sir.
mentioned a little bit of why you were running, but if you could just give us like what the real reason, the biggest reason, why are you running for Congress?
Federal overreach. I'll put it in 2 words: federal overreach.
Federal over.
Um, I've been affected, like most Americans have been affected. 22 would be an historic year time in our country, in our state. Our First Amendment, the right to assemble, the right to come together, to worship, the Constitution is very clear that Congress shall make no, and there's no law, pertaining and restricting the our First Amendment to right to come to church and to assemble and the freedoms of religion. So in 22, we closed our church and turned out the lights for the last time. So I've seen how the government has stepped in and violated the very thing that they took office and swore to. Everyone in office, they put their hand on the Bible and they put their other hand in the air, and they swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. Well, in 2020, they violated that oath. Now, I feel like today, just to clarify a little bit, there's not one person I don't think in the country that uh, would have not approved of the 2 weeks to curb the virus, but the 2 weeks turned to 2 years. And when you saw the curtain rolled back just a little bit with how much control that our federal government has over Texans, over the United States, to be able to come in and literally dictate and to pick winners and losers. And that's what they did in 2020. They said some would be important, some would not be important. You could work, you cannot. You could get medical, you cannot. Uh, Small businesses all across this district have shut their doors and turned out their lights for the last time. These are the things that really drove me. And then you couple that with the housing crash in 2008 when the government was bailing out bankers and banks, and Fannie Mae was going under, and they were getting the bailout, and J.P. Morgan and Wells Fargo, and the list just goes on. All the bailouts, right? At the same time that they were bailing all them people out, we sit here. When I say we, middle class America, they don't like middle class America. And I say they, federal government as a whole, doesn't seem to like it. They'll bail out the big corporations and they'll give handouts to the poor. But what about the middle class? We just get the government's foot on our throat. And so you take all these things and life lessons that I've learned through my life and dealing with federal government. But this biggest one was how they dictated to the church. And in some states, pastors were going to jail and being fined ridiculous amounts of money because they chose to obey God rather than man. And so these are my biggest push. This is really what drove me into run in 2020. It continues to drive me even today.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the next question. And so with that, what will be your number? It sounds like you kind of answered this question, but what will be your number one priority as a U.S. representative if you get into office?
Well, I'll just say this. Donald Trump's going to be our next president. I'll put that out there. I feel confident that he will be, and he's going to need friends in Congress. So first and foremost, let's roll back his regulations, and let's get back to building the wall. Let's get back to deporting illegal immigrants, holding Mexico policies, and so forth. So that would be my first thing that I would like to see happen. Whatever we have to do, if we've got to tie it to funding to Latin America, if we got to, tie it to funding in Mexico, however we got to do it, but we got to get a control on our border. And secondly, it would be, we got to control spending. America is broke. Congress has no really idea what a true trillion is. I don't even know what true trillion is. And we're trillions and trillions. It's just a number they just throw out there, right? But we got to control spending. So how do we control spending? We got to take back, and I say Congress has to take back a hold of the purse. So let's work to do that. Let's take a hold of the purse. Let's get rid of some agencies, the FBI, the school agencies, drug, tobacco, and firearm agency. Let's try to roll back some of those things. The IRS. Let's do what we can to curb some spending, and then stop giving our money away to all these countries that cannot stand us. I, for the life of me, cannot understand why we do that. When our own border is open and we got people here in America that are really struggling. Real people, Main Street people.
Yeah. So I've got a couple more questions, quite a few more, but the next one it's talking about some of the things you've already hit, I think. And we'll talk about federal government here in just a second. I've got a question on that. But how do you feel about the state of our nation? What do you feel is, what's your feel of the state of our nation?
I feel the state of our nation is in a moral decline, and it's spinning out of control in the wrong direction. Uh, the federal government has got their fingers virtually in every aspect of our life, and we probably don't even know. They got it in ways we probably don't even know. From local law enforcement to our schools, our colleges, so much that they have. So I think that the moral decay of our country is spiraling out of control. And it's all driven because I think the federal government really forgets that it is the states that made the federal government, not the federal government that made the states. And it is the federal government that is supposed to be working for you and I, not us working for them. And they should not be using, and I believe they do, uh, the taxpayers as their personal bank. They'll reach in your pocket at any moment and they'll take what you got. And I think it's wrong. I think we need to reverse some of these things.
Okay, so that kind of leads in to my next question. And the next question is, do you support reducing the size of our federal government?
Absolutely, 100%. It's way too big.
So you spoke earlier too. You said like the FBI. So I mentioned this to Cliff Wiley, and one of the things for me being a law enforcement officer, I'm right there with you somewhat that I think something has to happen. I kind of go more towards maybe refunding the FBI. And I mentioned to him, and this is where I'm going to ask you, because I think we've got to reduce our federal government. If you look at the 10th Amendment, the states, for one, are the ones that had the power to make laws unless it's written in the Constitution. And I think our government has gotten a little out of control. So were you going to say something?
I was to your point. Yes, it's because we're not following what the Congress is not following what they've been elected to do and swore to uphold, and that's enumerated powers. There's only a certain amount of things that the federal government is by the Constitution has been mandated to handle. So what are some of those things? We'll talk about coin money, raise taxes, have an army. We'll talk about commerce, making sure that you and I can buy and sell and travel across state lines, and that we wouldn't be taxed like a foreign country from state to state. So there are a certain amount of things that that Congress should be controlling and working toward. And that's what I think we need to focus on. Let's get back to the basics. And what I see of being around congressmen and political figures that have spent their life doing it and they aspire to do it and they're politicians is that they don't seem to have an appetite to really uphold and get to the business of the people. And so, yes, let's limit government. We don't need the federal government in every aspect of our life. We have the states, and the states have their own government, and we can govern ourselves and let the federal government do what we've hired them to do.
Okay, so that sounds pretty good to me. I really think we've got to, and that's why I asked this question. And talking about the FBI, like I said, I asked this presented this question to Cliff Wiley, and I asked him, I'm going to ask you the same question. I think we need some type of police that can do nationwide, but I don't think it needs to be federal. I think it should be something like a USBI or something like that, a States Bureau of Investigations, to where all the states come together and collect information together, but it's controlled by, like, maybe you come up with something like how our Senate's formed. You get 2 members from every state, and then you have a head of that agency, but that every state has an input and maybe make it elected, just like our sheriffs are. Because this, for me, the FBI is out of control. And I think we've got to rein them in. And I really do not believe anywhere in the Constitution do I see anything about having a federal, because it nearly seems like they're an arm of the military at sometimes. And so, because they're federal, and that's where a
They're
lot of
federal.
citizens that I talk to, I mean, I've had citizens as a law enforcement officer that have come to me and been like, why do y'all need armored vehicles? And I explained to them that, on local law enforcement level, hey, we do need to have some armored vehicles for,
You get shot at, don't you?
yeah. I mean, you don't want us out there without any armor, without anything to go
Right,
protect your family, to protect your kids.
right.
But at the same time, we'll talk a little bit more about the Second Amendment. I think the people should be able to defend themselves more. And I think we've gotten away from a lot of that. So I don't want to talk too much common sense here, but of my views, I really want to let you kind of speak here. So if you don't have any more to put on that, I'll go ahead and move to the next question.
Well, let me just address it for a few words. So the FBI is was, I think, intended and created in the right frame of mind, but it has been used for evil, and it's become part of the deep state.
Yes.
So it is good to have an agency that collects information, data from criminals all over the country, and be able to cooperate from state to state. I think that they are. It is a necessity, but we could do that just by us being friends with Oklahoma and Arkansas. We could do that on a state level as well. I agree with what you're saying. What's happened, I think, is that the FBI has been weaponized, and we saw it really in 2016 with the coup against Donald Trump and all that. And then what we're even seeing now. So if the FBI has the ability to come into your home and citizens' homes of the U.S. and be able to drag a mama out by the hair of her head without due process, without a guilty verdict from their peers or whatever, or using or categorizing parents that speak up against school boards and educational issues. That's our First Amendment, right? Is the right to speak. And so the FBI is tainted in the last several years more openly,
Yes,
if
sir.
you will. It's probably always been going on, but lately more openly, so that the curtain is pulled back just a little bit. So let's rein that in. Let's do a checks and balance, like you said. Let's figure out some way where every state's represented, and that we're actually not having it all one party or the other, and let the law be the law, and not what I think or what they think, but you know, let the law be the law,
Yeah.
and that's where we need to get it to.
Okay. So we've
And I'm
already
willing to fund it too.
ready to defund them, you said?
No, not defund it, but not buy a new building. Do we need a new building?
Yeah. I uh, I might agree with you there that they really. I don't, like I said, this is more about letting the people hear your voice, and I don't want to
Okay.
go too much into that. I share a lot of different things out there. If you go back in my history, you can see I've shared some things not supporting the FBI. So, but we'll go
Okay.
ahead and move to the next question so everybody can hear, the voters can hear your voice. Do
Okay.
you believe the Constitution is the supreme law of the land?
I believe it was designed and framed that way by our forefathers. Absolutely. Do I believe we're following it? No, sir.
So,
I
but you,
believe I I believe they've thrown this thing out. They swear to it, they call it, but the way that they come in and shut down my church tells me that this is not what they're following anymore. They're following their own desire, their own will, big money, big pharma, however you want to categorize it. But this is what it needs to be. And enough American people, enough Texans have got to get tired of it, where we stop electing the same quality of candidates year after year They sell us a bill of goods year after year, election after election, and we swallow it line, sinker, hook, and all. And that is the reason that we had. You talk about term limits. You know how you get term limits? American people keep voting the same people. That's the easiest way to get rid of term limits.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me. I know that's going to be a question I have for you here in just a minute. But yeah, I think we definitely have some problems with our voting system and everything too. And some of it is, I think, though, people don't like with what we're doing here with Common Sense right now, sharing the candidate's voice with the people, because I think a lot of our smaller towns, especially, the word's not out there. Plus, I think we need to have some other things in place. However, this is more about your voice. So if you're done with that question, I'd like to move to the next one. I think I know your feelings on it. But
Yes,
the
sir.
next question is, what is your stance on the Second Amendment?
The Second Amendment, boy, I'm telling you, if we don't look at world events going on right now and think that we need a Second Amendment more now than ever, just look at Ukraine. It's illegal for them to have guns. They're citizens. Israel, illegal for them to have their guns. What happened? The enemy comes in and starts annihilating their land, stealing from them. All this tragedy. If America surrenders their gun rights and surrenders our Second Amendment, and our government officials keep selling us down the river, we will end up without it. But without it, if we trade our Second Amendment for a sense of security, then we've already lost. The Second Amendment should never be impeded upon. There should never be a conversation about universal background checks, in my opinion, but stops, red flag laws. If I want to buy a cannon, if I want to buy an AR, I should be able to buy an AR to protect my home, right? To keep invaders from coming in, people unlawful, people want to do me harm. This is the thing that our country was built upon. And I'm telling you, living in Texas, if you don't have a great sense of the Second Amendment and the big cannon just come and take it, that's why we're not invaded right now, because they know that the heart of the American people, and we're armed in America. We are armed. And so I am a very strong Second Amendment. So people have the temptation that they want to change it because they use, tragedy. And we've had a lot of tragedies. We've had a lot of school shootings. And in my lifetime, I would have never dreamed someone could actually go into a school and shoot a bunch of kids. I can't even get over the horror that is. But let's start talking about training, assault training. Let's if our teachers want to carry, and I'm glad to live in Ferris. I believe Ferris is the first town in Texas that allows their teachers to carry if they feel good and they go through the proper training to actually carry in the schools. I'm telling you, if you want to deter a criminal, let's stop taking the no weapons beyond this point off the doors, because it ain't stopping the criminals.
Yeah.
It's only stopping the law-abiding citizens from carrying their guns in there. If a criminal had to think twice about going into a Walmart or to a school and shoot it up because they know that somebody possibly inside there, not 10 minutes away, 5 minutes away, but right there, could end that situation very quickly. I think it's imperative that that's the way that we address the violence in our country. And then we force our laws, right? Stop letting criminals out.
Yes, definitely. I think that's a big part of it is this weak on crime stance of enforcing the laws and everything. And you look at the states that have that problem, like California, people are moving away from there because they're tired of it. They can't even feel safe just going to the store. And
It's horrible.
so we'll go ahead and move on. And the next question is, I think you kind of mentioned Ukraine. What is your stance on Ukraine?
I think we need to stop spending money in Ukraine. Um, I know that seems to some, depends on where you're at. Some people think we ought to keep doing it, keep sending it there because they feel like that if we don't keep supporting Ukraine, Russia's going to keep going. That's fear mongering. And Republicans do it just as good as Democrats. They just fear monger, right?
Mhm.
I heard Donald Trump say the other night on one of his interviews that when he was president, he didn't have no wars. They were thinking he was going to have a World War III,
Oh
but
yeah.
he didn't have any wars. Why? Because he ruled, not ruled, but he governed by a position of strength. They knew. Russia sat still. And secondly, another thing is, so why is it that Russia and Iraq and Iran and all of them are able to do what they do? Is because America is dependent upon their energy because we're not drilling our own energy in our own country to become independent. So two things I think needs to happen. I think we need to stop sending money to Ukraine. They have showed to be what's the word? Little bit dishonest or corrupt,
Correct. Yeah.
right? Let's stop doing that. Let's get our own border secure. Let's balance our own budget. How are we sending money we don't have? We don't have it, and we're sending it. So yes, let's get back to governing from a point of strength. America is the greatest country in the world. I'm proud to say it. I live here. And if someone don't think that it's the greatest country in the world, they need a first class ticket out.
I could probably agree with you a little bit there on sending some people out of this country, but hey, it is a free nation. People, that's the great
I
thing
know.
about our nation. So, but speaking of free, I'd like to move on to the next question. And do you feel our elections are free and fair?
Depends on if you're the governing class. No, I don't.
So,
Uh,
so
I I think that we have had opportunities to have open doors to make it worse and worse from election to election. Again, I'm very fortunate to live in Ellis County. I think that here and some of these other smaller counties are really trying to make it fair and free in Texas. I'd like to see the whole country kind of follow suit as that. Of course, elections are held and they are governed by state officials. So I don't think I know that it's not a federal issue, but it is a more of a state issue. And so the federal government shouldn't be suing the state of Texas because we don't think that you ought to have drop boxes all over the city, unmanned, unwatched, and people can just, put harvest ballots and put them in there. In this county, they've cleaned up their voter rolls. I think that would help a tremendous amount. Some of the ladies here in Ellis County have worked very hard and diligently to make sure that our voter rolls are cleaned up. We need that across the country, I think, believe. Numbered and papered ballots, those things do work, where we're not using machines to do algorithms. I thought that in the last election, to be able to call it, but then I saw it again the other night in the primary with Donald Trump, when they called it so fast. It really makes it questionable, right? How you could call it so fast.
well, he did have a
With,
big
with
lead, but
Well, I get it, right? I
yeah,
understand, but
yes.
in 5 minutes. So I think in my last time running in this office, and I get it, like you said, he had a big lead. The incumbent had a big lead. I get it, but at least let me get set down after the polls shut off before you call it.
It was kind of crazy.
So I think we're on the right path in Texas. I like to see the country take that same path, and if we don't protect our ballot box, we don't have a free country. And you see these in these other foreign countries where they call it free elections, but it's really not. And so I want to make sure that we, on state level, are protecting our ballot box. It's imperative.
Yes, sir. So I've got one more question for you. And you already mentioned this. And so you're kind of going to be repeating, but what is your real stance on the border? What do you think should be done? If you could just hammer it down to just a few things. I know you already said that you support like just closing the border down, everything, but if you could put it into a few sentences, maybe a paragraph here of
Okay.
what do you really believe on the border?
So the border's out of control. We know that it's real. Um, it is the number one priority for Republicans, and it's becoming number one priority for the whole country, no matter what party you are. It's that bad across this country. So my stance on the border is that I believe how brass that Donald Trump was, how you may or may not like him, he got results on our border. Now, I'm thankful to live in a great country where people can come through here and they can seek residence and they can seek a citizen of the United States. And we have a open door policy. We want people to be able to come, right? It's not that we want to close the border. We just want people to come through it legally. We want to know who's coming here. We want to know that these people that are coming here is going to put their hand on the Constitution and raise their other hand, and they're going to swear their allegiance to the United States of America to protect and to uphold our laws and our customs. I'd like to see that. So how do you do that? Let's tie it to money. Everything happens to be tied to money. Let's close our borders. Donald Trump's already said that he wants to finish it. He already built 500 miles of it. Let's build some more. Let's make sure our border patrol agencies and ICE and all of them have all the tools they need. Whether it be drones, whether it be, like you say, armored vehicles, technical gear, training, whatever they need to make sure that we are securing our border. We cannot, in good conscience, or I could not see how the United States or Congress right now, in good conscience, can be so concerned about Ukrainian borders and leave ours wide open. I think it's a hypocrisy, and we must change that. So those are some of the things I would like to see us continue, not to close it, because we want people to be able to come legally.
Okay, sounds good to me. So for the finale here, if you would like to just kind of speak your piece there of, hey, come vote for me, whatever, but like just a little campaign speech, I guess, of why the people should come vote for you.
Well, Curtis, I want to say thank you for allowing me to have more than 2 minutes. You don't get much time in 2 minutes, and you got to talk really super fast. But this is where I'm at. I'm older now. Like David said, I was once young and now I'm old, and I've never seen the righteous forsaken or a seed begging bread. And I have a lot of life history and a lot of experience through life. In 2008, I was building homes for the federal government, HUD homes for low-income housing. And I was building them in the city of Dallas in 2008 when the housing market had crashed. The federal government was bailing out Wall Street, bailing out large banks, Fannie Mae, Fannie Mac, and bankers were getting their big bonuses for the job well done. And people in Dallas were going to jail for what they were doing, and I wasn't getting paid. And so in 2009, I did file Chapter 13, and those that file Chapter 13 only have about less than 10% chance of completing the program and paying all their debt back. I would say to you that I am a man of integrity, that I did fight through all that. I did spend the 5 years. I did pay every dime back that I owed to every creditor, vendor, supplier. And how did I do that? I did it by going to work. I took a job, $17 an hour, plunging toilets and changing light bulbs. I threw newspapers for 7 days a week for the Fort Worth Star Telegram. I took side jobs. I worked weekends. I did everything I could, but I got through it and I successfully made it. I am an success story in America. In 2020, when the federal government was coming through, churches are closing down. You can't assemble. Being in a small church, we had just built a new building in 2019. We could not assemble. We could not continue to keep the doors open. And so out of that, we ended up having to close our doors like 30% of the churches in the U.S. did, close their doors and turn the lights out for the last time. What I'm saying to you today is that I am a survivor and a fighter. I don't know when to quit. This is my second run. That should tell you something. My opponent has never had to worry about making payroll. He's never had to worry about buying products. He's never had to worry about selling products, collecting products, supply chains, any of that stuff, work out any of those things. Well, I'm going to tell you that I have. I've got experience. I've got knowledge. I know how to dig out. I know how to roll up my sleeves and do whatever it takes to get the job done. I think that the moral decay in America is on a decline. I think that our debt is beyond what we could pay back at this current rate that we're running down. We're not controlling spending. The Congress feels that they have the endless supply of checks. Therefore, they have an endless supply of money. In March of 2022, Congress went back after the primary. They voted themselves for the largest pay increase in the history of Congress for themselves. No businessman in this environment, when America is struggling to keep food on the table and gas in the car and a roof over their head, no businessman could afford to give those kind of raises. Congress has lost sight of what common sense is and where you and I really are today on Main Street. We're the ones that are in the trenches digging out every day while they're flying high on endless budgets and supplies of money and so forth. I would make a commitment to you if you would see your way clear to vote for me. My commitment to you is to work to curb their spending, to secure our border, and to be our next presidential companion and friend in Congress to make sure that his policies are followed. And I would work to do that each and every day. That's my commitment to you. And I want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. Curtis, I would say thank you to you and for your time for allowing me to this few moments with you and your audience.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for coming on today. And if you don't have anything else, we'll go ahead and end the stream for tonight.
Okay. Thank you again. God bless. God bless Texas.
Amen.